We are very close to the launch of Lost Ark, and it's time for you guys to actually make your decision on the class you want to play. Lucky for you, in this video I'm going to be breaking down, giving you like an overview of each of the class, mainly from a PvP perspective, but I'm going to be giving you a breakdown and overview of how each and every class plays. It's going to be very general, but it'll give you a better understanding of what class you want to play and how to play it, and so you can see if this class is the perfect fit for you. Now, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, as well as consider subscribing, because we have a lot of Lost Ark content on the channel, as well as a lot more coming up, and I want you guys to be informed, so this is one of the best places for it. And I will have timestamps for each of the classes, so you can go to whichever class you specifically are looking for. But all that said and done, let's dive on in. We're going to start it off with the warrior class. So to start this one off, we're going to start off with the Berserker. This is my personal favorite class and the class I probably will be playing during the launch. And this is your more standard Berserker that you see in a lot of other games. And just like in other games, the Berserker in Lost Ark is a specialist at dealing a ton of damage. Now the class features a full-fledged Berserk mode, as you come to expect and love from a Berserker class, wielding a massive great sword and tons of heavy armor. Now it does have some of the simplest combos to pull off, but they are very hard hitting, and that's one thing I really like about the Berserker, that it is a very strong class, but it's very simple. Now compared to every other warrior that we're going to have during launch, the Berserker is the most mobile of the three. It is the fastest of the three, and it also deals the most damage of the three. Now it will not keep up with most assassin classes or even some of the fighters, but it is definitely mobile enough that you'll feel comfortable fighting and engaging a lot of other characters, and feel strong defensive enough that you're not melting like paper. Now, like every class, the Berserker does have its drawbacks, and a lot of that is to do with its cooldowns. And if you can work around the cooldowns and be smart on how you use it, the Berserker can be a very devastating class to play against. Up next, we're going to be talking about the Holy Paladin. And the Holy Paladin is your caster hybrid warrior. He wields a holy book, uses divine light, as well as a long sword. And this is going to be the class you like if you like to be a warrior that is more of a frontliner, but you have tons of supporting skills. One of the things that make the Paladin really shine is the fact that he is the most shield heavy character in the game when it comes to shielding his team. Now his playstyle is a little bit on the slower side when it compared to other warriors like the Berserker. One of the best thing about the class is its pure utility. You have this warrior that is pretty tanky, that can frontline in situations where you may not have a frontliner. You have this character that can provide good support in forms of shields as well as pretty decent control. And you have a character that can actually do really good damage depending on how you play it. Now the class is usually rated as one of the best classes to play in the game. Playing the Paladin, you will almost never go wrong picking it, and most players would love to have you on their team. Now it's time to talk about the final warrior, and I bring you the Gunlance. Now the Gunlancer is a heavy armored warrior that wields a shield as well as a Gunlance. I think the best way to describe the Gunlance is this class is played as a frontlining tank with pretty good AoE control and tons of shielding. Now traditionally, Lost Ark isn't a game that is built around the Holy Trinity system that you expect in a lot of other MMOs. Functionally, most classes serve as a DPS, but there are a few support classes, and this is one of them. And its support comes in the form of being essentially a tank to some extent. It is one of the few classes in the entire game that has a taunt. By no means are you the most mobile character in the game. You are actually pretty slow compared to other classes, as well as the damage isn't always high on the Warlord, but again, you do have your burst phases. My recommendation, if you really want to play a tankier class, that is a warrior that's going to be like melee range, that's tanky, the Gunlance will probably be a really good fit for you. When it comes to PvE, players would love to have the class, and when it comes to PvP, you can be a devastating frontliner if played correctly. Next, we're going to be talking about the martial artist. So next we're going to be talking about the Soulfist, and Soulfist is basically Goku. Now you will see that she has abilities like Kaioken, Super Kamehameha, Spirit Bombs, you know the works. So the playstyle of the Soulfist is actually very different from all the other fighters because she is more of a caster than a fighter in the sense. She uses a lot of laser beams, she would use a lot of like ki blasts. She's a character that you're going to probably see sitting in the back, waiting for her buffs, going her triple form, and then blasting players, nuking them down, kind of retreating, hanging out a little bit in the back, waiting for her cooldowns to come off because she does get a little weaker. And then you're going to be going back in and then doing a lot of damage once your Super Saiyan phase is back up. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In PvE, the class is very reliant around one ability, and that is their Spirit Bomb move that you see a lot. In my opinion, one of the best burst damage dealers in the entire game, if not the best. But she does have a lot of downtime, and you got to be really smart on how you use her uptime and her downtime. Now that we're done with the Soulfist, let's talk about the Striker and the Warddancer. I'm going to put these two in the same categories because they are counterpart classes. And the Striker is my most played class of all classes thus far. And being that the Striker is the newest class, I find the class to be one of the more interesting classes in the game. Very impactful punches, very fluid combos, very high mobility, and really good control. One thing I really liked about the Striker was the fact that he shined really good at catching characters like Devil Hunters, and Assassins weren't that difficult for him because his mobility was pretty high. And he was able to control people if he got the upper hand on the fight. Now, when it comes to the Warddancer, I do think the Warddancer is marginally better when it comes to the team buffs because the buffs that's offered by the Warddancer is just a little better than the one that's offered by the Striker. Also, some of her abilities have a little bit more super armor. I think it's one or two more abilities to have more super armors on her abilities. So I do think fundamentally the Warddancer is a little bit better than the Striker at the moment. But overall, the class plays like a very fluid fighter that you expect from a Ryu style looking character. Now, when you're playing PvE with the class, at least for the Striker's perspective, you're going to be doing a lot of back attacks. The class isn't exactly going to be punching things from the front because a lot of his skills are best when he do back attacks. As well as you're probably going to be putting a lot of your skills into mastery so you can do your special skills like your Hadoukens as much as possible, because that's where I think the biggest part of your damage is from that. Overall, again, if you like the fighter style that's mobile with like lots of cool fluid combos, the Striker and the Warddancer may be for you. So next, let's talk about the Scrapper. And I think the best way to describe a Scrapper is, while it may look similar to something like the Warddancer, the playstyle is very different. I think the Scrapper will trade in a bit of its mobility and a bit of its attack speed for more precise, higher damage dealing abilities. I think when the characters jump you on the back line or gets into a scrap with you, I think that's exactly where she excels, as you can expect from someone named the Scrapper. Personally, for me, if I had to choose a character to play, if I was a fighter type player, I would choose the Scrapper because I find the Scrapper to be one of the best at just simply getting into the fight and fighting players on the back line and just going in and not feeling so threatened that you're gonna just lose a fight. I think the best thing about the Scrapper is the fact that if you're ever in a situation where you're engaging in a character in a 1v1, you just feel like you're in control of the fight in a lot of cases. Your AoEs are good, your control is really good. You may not be as slow as something like a Striker or a Warddancer, but you definitely can hit way harder than those, in my opinion. Now, let's talk about the Assassins. Now, first up on our list, it is the Blade, and the Deathblade features 3 swords and medium armor. If you're playing the Deathblade, expect to be a character that is highly mobile, that likes to jump in and out of fights, and can do it fairly reliably in PvP and PvE. Now, one of the best things about playing a Deathblade, especially in its current form, is the Deathblade feels unstoppable. And what I mean by that is the fact that a lot of her abilities have some form of super armor protection on it. Now to add to that, the Deathblade also has some of the lowest cooldown knockups available. Now while she doesn't do the most damage in the entire game, I think the Demonic does do a little bit more damage than the Deathblade. The Deathblade, if comboed correctly, can do some phenomenal AoE damage with her huge AoEs on a lot of her abilities. Couple that with her super armor and her lingering knockups, and you have probably the best assassin available in Lost Ark right now. Now on to the second and final assassin, and I bring you the Shadowhunter. Now the Shadowhunter is actually fairly different compared to the Deathblade, mainly in terms of playstyle. I think the best way to describe the Shadowhunter is she is a assassin that takes advantage of range as well as melee abilities. She will use a lot of lasers, shurikens, and many other ranged abilities to attack you from a distance and to chip you down. And whenever she needs to finish you off, she would go into her melee range, use her demon abilities, and just finish you off. On top of that, she has one of the strongest transformations in the game. Whenever she hits an enemy enough, she will eventually transform into her demonic form, giving her a unique set of abilities that are quite insane in damage and makes her nearly an unstoppable killing machine. If you value a assassin that is more hybrid melee range, that can jump in, kill you if she needs to, jump out, hit you from a distance and chip you down, then the Shadowhunter may be for you. Now that we've finished up with all the assassins, let's move on to the gunners. And to start this one off, we're going to start off with the Deadeye and the Gunslinger, since they are the female-male counterparts. So the best way to describe how this class is played, you use a arsenal of weapons, a double machine gun pistol, a shotgun, and a sniper's rifle. This class has the most skills in the game because you have to swap between 3 weapons. So typically the pistol is used for usually mobility, as well as gap close, sometimes setups for your CCs. You use your shotgun for your big damage abilities when you get up close, and then you use your snipers for your pecking, maybe to set up stuns, things of the sort. You have to be very mindful of all of your abilities because they all have their own separate cooldowns, so being able to swap and know exactly what you're doing and how to do it is very important with this class. If I'm being completely honest, I think this is the most difficult class to play in the game simply because of how many skills and how many cooldowns you need to be aware of. But if you can master using the weapon swap, master your positioning, and understand how to use your cooldowns very effectively, you can be a menace from almost any distance with this class. I don't think you can really go wrong with picking a Gunslinger or a Deadeye because they are really versatile characters with a lot of good damage, a lot of good control, good mobility, and an overall a very fun way of playing Lost Ark. Next, let's talk about the Artillerist, and this one is pretty unique compared to all the rest of the gunners. If I was to describe this class, I would describe this as a slow-moving fortress of mega damage. This class is a specialist at dealing a lot of huge AoE, high burst damage. But it is a little bit on the slow side. I think it is like the slowest class in the game. But the class specializes in having a lot of AoE damage. He will drop missiles, artillery strikes, giant lightning aura thingies, just tons of AoE damage. Not only all of that, he also has turrets. He can set up stationary turrets that he can shoot. He can get into a turret himself, as well as he has a ultimate that lays down a massive turret that shoots giant lasers. So if you're interested in a gunner that is a little bit slower, but definitely more tankier and more of a engineer kind of playstyle, I think the Blaster will probably be a pretty good fit. And he has probably one of the cheesiest combos in PvP. You probably get pretty high in the ranks of PvP with that one combo alone. Now on to the last and final gunner. I bring you the Sharpshooter. And if I had to compare the character to something, it would probably be something like Hawkeye from the Avengers. He has ballistic arrows, he has supercharged arrows, he has time delayed explosive arrows. He has quite a few different arrow combinations, but not only that, he has quite a few stuns and traps. He has like a trap that will shock entire areas, And if he needs to, in the event that someone gets in his face, he also has a few melee abilities that gives him the ability to actually fight back against people who are in his face. Now, to add to that, he also has stealth, which is actually pretty cool because it gives him the ability to sneak around and get advantageous locations and positioning for his PvP. And for his main identity skill, he uses a winged ally where he can summon tornadoes and keep people in place. If you favor a playstyle that is pretty much a very long distance archer who likes to shoot from a distance and deal tons of damage, but also like a bit of stealth, maybe a little bit of melee combat mixed in with a bit of summons, then the Sharpshooter may be for you. Now that we covered all the gunners, let's move on to our final class, and that is all the mages. And to begin this one off, we're going to start with the Bard. And the Bard is one of the few support classes available in Ark. Alongside the Holy Knight, she is probably one of the best, if not the best support. She's one of the few classes that can heal you, which is very unique, and I don't think any other class can do that. And then she has some of the best team buffs available in all of Lost Ark. Now this may sound silly to you, but when it comes to a Bard in PvP, they are quite terrifying. Mainly because they can make or break or set the pace for any game. A team without one will probably lose to a team with one, and that's just the simple fact when it comes to a Bard. And in PvE, your buffs and your heals are invaluable because there's almost no class that can do what a Bard can do, and that's very unique. So for all my players out there who actually like a support class, the Bard could be a really good fit for you because in Lost Ark, Bards are they're overly appreciated. Like, people love them, and I love to have them on my team. Now, when you play her in PvP, she's obviously going to be a little bit more on the skittish side, but she's going to be in the back casting skills, and I find a lot of her skills to be fairly protected. She can just cast spells and be pretty okay, even when there's people in her face hitting her. She has some decent control for a caster class, and again, she has a lot of heals that no other character can do. So when it comes to a PvP support character, if you favor the Bard playstyle of being the support character, you are in luck because Lost Ark loves you. Now on to the last and final class, and this will be the Sorceress. Now, originally this was going to be a summoner in this one's place, but they decided to go with the Sorceress. I'm not sure what the reason is behind this one, but unfortunately for this one, I actually don't know anything about the Sorceress because currently on the server I play on, which is the Russian server, this character simply doesn't exist. So this is going to be actually a pretty new character coming to NA, and hopefully maybe it comes to Russia too. I'm not sure about that. But this is a brand new character, and we're probably going to have to experience this one together. In this one, I'm probably just going to let the video play out and let you guys just kind of watch the cinematics of it, because at the end of the day, I'm never going to provide you any bad information, especially if I don't know anything about it. So hopefully you guys understand. And there you have it, guys. Those are the 15 classes that will be coming to Lost Ark. Unfortunately, again, the Sorceress is a new character, and I won't have as much information about that I can't provide you with, so I'm sorry about that. But with that said, I did give you guys a lot of information of my personal experience of fighting against all of those characters in PvP, as well as playing alongside them in PvE, and hopefully you have a better understanding of how each of the classes play, and you can make a more informed decision for the class you actually choose to play. Now, if you do have any questions about any of the characters, leave me a comment down below, and I will be sure to comment and let you know any information you need, if I can provide it, of course. And don't forget to subscribe and like. I'm still trying to reach that first 1,000 subscribers. So if you can help me out, hit that subscribe button. And with all that said, stay tuned for more Lost Ark content. And have a nice day, guys. See you in the next one. Later.